Okay, we are here. We're alive. I want to thank everybody for joining me today. We have a very special guest, Kamilah Moore. Kamilah, would you please like to introduce yourself and just let everybody let everybody know who you are
Mhm.
in relation to AB 3121?
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name's Kamilah Victoria Moore, and I am the chairperson for the California Reparations Task Force, which is the first task force of its kind in the nation to study and actually develop reparations proposals for African Americans, with a special consideration for African Americans who are descendants of persons enslaved in the United States. Just a little bit more about me. I'm from Los Angeles, South Central, Leimert Park originally. Went to UCLA for undergrad, taught in between undergrad and law school, went to Columbia Law School, and then also um, obtained a dual degree in international criminal law from the University of Amsterdam, where I wrote a thesis on global reparatory justice for people of African descent for the transatlantic slave trade, the institution of slavery, and their legacies.
Okay, and of course, obviously, we all know Rob as well. No need for introduction for our good brother in the corner over there.
In the corner.
I'm in the corner too, so we're both in the corner. You know, the first thing that I want to get into, Kamilah, is I've noticed online there's been a lot of conversation around eligibility. Even though it seems to have been cemented with the task force that's going to be lineage based, there are some that feel like the language isn't as strong as it should be. So I just want to read what you all have written down versus what I've seen others say how it should have been, and just maybe give us a little information on whether or not your definition concerning eligibility is as concrete as some people might think it isn't. So let me pull that up really quickly. And I'm going to share the screen so everyone can see this. All right. So this is what the task force agreed upon. Motion: define the community of eligibility based on lineage determined by an individual being an African American descendant of chattel enslaved person, or the descendant of a free Black person living in the US prior to the end of the 19th century. Now, the last portion, I've seen people online, they don't necessarily have an issue with. They understand why that's there, concerning those who were here prior to the end of the 19th century. But when it comes to the first half, that's where I kind of see a lot of debate happening. And there are those that feel as if there should have been a slight tweak where it states this. And now I have it in front of us right now. And it states motion: define the community of eligibility based on lineage determined by an individual being an African American descendant of a chattel enslaved person in America. So it seems that there are some that have an issue with that part not being there where it says in America, because then I guess for some they feel like it leaves a window open for someone like myself who's of Haitian descent. I'm Haitian, right? I was born in the United States, but both my parents are from Haiti. So they feel like a window is kind of open for someone like myself to be able to sneak in and apply for eligibility, because I guess on a technicality, I'm African American and I'm also a descendant of an enslaved person, from chattel slavery. You get what I'm saying? So you want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. I think the brief and easy response that I can give you all is that that motion was literally typed as, member Jovan Scott Lewis was saying it. And so what I think what's really missing from that motion is a comma. If you can just put it back up there again.
Oh, sure. I'll put it back up.
What it's missing, and we can talk about that in the next task force meeting, is a comma between free Black person and living, so that there is increased clarity in terms of African American descendant of chattel enslaved person, or a descendant of a free Black person, comma, living in the U.S. prior to the end of the 19th century. So then that last clause, living in the U.S. prior to the end of the 19th century, applies not only to that free Black person qualifier, but also the African American descendant of a chattel enslaved person. So it's just missing a comma, and that's because we were literally doing it as we discussed it at the task force meeting.
Okay, so as far as the definition that you have here concerning eligibility, there essentially there's no way that like I said, somebody like myself would be able to sneak into that, correct?
Correct. Are you saying that your family migrated to the United States after?
No, no, but just they didn't migrate. Well, they came after the 19th century.
Okay.
But as I was saying before, like if we're like being super technical, right?
Mm-hmm.
As far as my paperwork and everything, and U.S. Census, whatever, all my documentation in the United States, technically I am African American, and I am a descendant of chattel enslaved persons. Technically, you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely, I get it.
If we're being super technical, it might seem tedious, but like if we're being super technical, and I think that's where a lot of people, some people have some concern, you know what I mean? Where it says, oh, somebody like Tony could slip right through the cracks. But from what you're saying, that's not really possible, correct?
No, that's not possible. No, it's not. That's not how the motion, I believe, was constructed when Jovan created it. And again, this was transcribed by an assistant at the DOJ as member Jovan Scott Lewis was stating it. And so again, what it's really missing, and this is something we can revisit, is literally just a comma by free Black person, so that qualifier about the requirement of living in the U.S. prior to the 19th century would apply to the African American descendant of a chattel enslaved person.
Well,
and go ahead, Rob. Go ahead. No, Rob. Go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, in my opinion, just looking at that definition, in my opinion, it would be more easy to nail it down to specifics if we talk about the specifics of where the chattel slavery took place. If we talk about just an African American person who is a descendant of chattel slavery, that could be an African American person anywhere in the diaspora that's a descendant of chattel slavery, of any source of chattel slavery. The chattel slavery, in my opinion, is what pins it down to being somebody here in the United States, and it would be American plantation chattel slavery of the South or whatever, something like that. So in that definition, just looking at it as far as what Tony was talking about, possible loopholes, that's a possible loophole that I see, that somebody who is, someone like Tony, who is a descendant of chattel slavery, who, because he is a descendant of chattel slavery, he's an African American who's here. It doesn't specify where his would be descendant of chattel slavery of the French. Ours would be descendants of chattel slavery here at plantations in the American South. You know what I'm saying? That's just something that I observed. I was just wondering if you had any input about that.
Yeah, I mean, I understand the critique, but I also want to just get your feedback. Do you understand where I'm coming from in terms of how adding that comma and that in that specific place will clear up any potential confusion?
Can you explain it again?
Well, again, if you add a comma right after free Black person, then the end of the sentence where it states that you have to have lived in the United States prior to the 19th century, then it's clear that that requirement applies not only to the free Black person, but to the African American descendant of a chattel enslaved person. So if you add a comma, then that it's clear what it means. And then to your point, I mean, there was slavery not only in the South, but also in the North as well. So that's why, it's United States and not just necessarily the South.
I actually I understand what you're saying now. I see it as I'm looking at it. After free Black person, comma, living in the U.S. prior to the end of the 19th century. So that where it should be a comma after person, then that last line is the solidifying line that makes it very clear that this is concerning those who are enslaved in America.
Yes.
Yeah, if the purpose of the comma is to make sure that it's specified that it's in America, and that is true, there was slavery in the North, but I would just like that I think I get that where you're talking about the comma now, so that I think that hopefully would nail that down.
Yeah, no, at least to me that makes sense now. And another thing too that's good to know as well is that it appears that at the moment this isn't 100% as far as like what was written by Jovan. It's not 100% solidified, meaning that you can make changes if you wanted to during the next task force meeting and whatnot, correct? Like it's not cemented in stone yet, no?
Well, the task force decided via 5-4 decision that eligibility would be based on lineage as opposed to race. So, we're moving forward in terms of that. But to your point, can the eligibility standard that's based on lineage be refined? I think so. We'll see.
I have a question for you. When it comes to these hearings that you all have, where do you have the most issues with people picking apart that definition? Is it the people who are hearing the task force, or are there other competing organizations who are also trying to compete for reparations, or why is there the issue that exists with having to make sure that the definition is so specific? Or is it because of your taking the request of like grassroots people, how they would like to see the definition framed? Where is that coming from? I'm just curious. I'm just asking because I think that's interesting.
I mean, the reparation space is pretty diverse. There's so many different diverse viewpoints around not just eligibility, but even the forms of reparations as well. And so I think where is it coming from in terms of the debate? I think it's just the sheer diversity of thought and opinion within the reparation space. As you know, there are organizations who have been staunchly supportive of, race-based reparations for the institution of slavery. And then there's other organizations in the reparation space that have been, staunchly in favor of lineage-based. And so it just shows you that there's just different thoughts.
The reason why I was asking, because I was wondering if any pushback was coming from the organization who would actually be granting the permission.
Oh, granting what permission?
If the task force and the initiatives were passed, is it that like the government of California, Gavin Newsom? Is it him that is asking for any specifics, or it? No, okay.
No, it's really up to the 9-member task force, and it's based on. We've met since June of 2021. So we've been meeting consistently over almost a year period. And we've heard people come to the task force to provide personal testimony on a range of issues and expert testimony on a range of issues. And in those testimonies, some people have, offered their opinion. Should, reparations should be race-based or lineage-based. And so the conversation around eligibility is mostly has been insular. It's the 9-member task force hearing information from folks who are providing testimony to us, public comment, emails, and then we made a decision based on that 10 months of history, and then also that last meeting that we had in March where we invited, 6 certified genealogists and some other folks to talk about the question.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good. So it seems pretty rock solid then. That's why I'm glad we had you on. It seems pretty rock solid in that there doesn't appear to be any real loopholes, and to the degree maybe to where some could argue there is. Like you said, during your next meeting, it's just a matter of adding a comma, and then everything's good and ready to go, for the most part. The second thing, and I think this is probably the most important thing that I wanted to bring up, that I hear a lot of conversation about online as well, right, is concerning cash payments. Now, I just want to read a little bit of this article that was released. I believe it was about the next day after you guys solidified that the requirements will be lineage based. So I'm going to read a little bit of this, and then I'll come back to you to get your thoughts on this. So let me pull that up for the audience. Okay. So just everybody knows where this is coming from. It's coming from Fox 40. The title of this article is Reparations Task Force Moves Forward with New Model. And when you come down here, it says, for compensation, the group agreed to use what economists call a state-specific harms model. The model would determine what specific harms the state should pay for, including unjust property taking, housing discrimination, unwarranted police violence, and labor discrimination, to name a few. It seems as if there might be a tier system where it's all for descendants of enslaved people, but depending if you were in the state of California longer, you probably experience more harm, said Kamilah Moore, the chair of the task force. The task force ultimately decided not to use The task force ultimately decided not to use what economists call the national model for reparations, which calculates an amount due to those eligible and divides the number among the group. Economists urge against the national model, noting that if compensation meant addressing the wealth gap between Black and white Americans, each eligible person would be owed more than $300,000. That would cost the state about $670 billion, which is money California does not have. This year's entire state budget is estimated to be less than half of that. Now, after this came out, I'll pull this up as well. After this came out, I want to say a couple days later, Stephen Bradford, California state senator, did an interview with, I believe it was Fox 40, and he stated this, and I'm going to play this for the audience right now.
Can California afford to pay reparations? Yes, we can. And without a doubt, let's not even start with saying they can't afford it. We can afford to do that, whether it's in first-time home buyer assistance, and whether it's free college tuition for those descendants of slavery, whether it's business grants. There are ways that we can compensate people, and even cash payments. So I just want to make sure it's going to be hard to craft this, but I think we can come up with a final product at the end that we can, one, be proud of, and two, we can implement here in the state of California. Can California?
Okay, so now with that being said, I'll put the camera back on us. So in one instance in the article, it says that you all agreed to move with a, I know I'm saying it wrong, but with a harms-based model, not the national model, which would essentially deliver cash payments. But then what I'm hearing Stephen Bradford say is that, no, we have the money to do said programs, and we also could do cash payments. So with that, like, that leaves me a little bit confused, in terms of cash payments. Will there be or won't there be? Can you guys do it or can't you?
Great question. So I'm in favor of cash payments. I support direct cash payments. And the task force is moving to decisions and discussions about the forms of reparations after June of this year. Most of our time has been dedicated to the study phase, right? Documenting the 400 years of harms against African Americans in this country and in the state. And then after that, we're moving from the study phase to the development stage, so where we're having substantive conversations amongst ourselves about, okay, how do we develop reparations? What do the forms look like? And so, Senator Bradford, as a member of the task force, said he's in favor of direct cash payments. I'm on record saying I support that as well. But to get some clarity on what was discussed at the last meeting, so we hired an economic consultant team as a task force. And the economic consultant team comprises of Sandy Darity, who is an economist at Duke University. And then there's also Thomas Kramer. He's not an economist, but he's a professor of public policy. And he has done a lot of academic work on calculating reparations based off of lost wages for enslavement. Right. There's also Dr. William A. Spriggs, who's an economist. He was the chair of economics in Howard University. He was a part of Obama's Labor Department. And I believe he's the chief economist now for the AFL-CIO. There's also a Kirsten Mullen. She's not an economist. She's a folklorist, but she's a part of the team because she co-wrote From Here to Equality, Reparations for Black Americans in the 21st Century with Dr. Darity. And then there's Professor Casey Campbell, who is an economist at Pace College, which is a university in California. And so these 5 people are working on calculating what potential compensation could come out of what we decide. And essentially at that last meeting, this was mainly from Dr. Darity. So I would even advise, if folks are really interested in delving deep into this particular issue, see about maybe if he would be open to coming onto your show. But Dr. Darity has been kind of very open in the news about this idea that, states are not able to pay reparations, because in his view, reparations would look like closing the racial wealth gap, or the lineage wealth gap, or the black-white wealth gap. And in order to close the black-white wealth gap, I believe he said, California would have to pay like each black person who's eligible like $300,000 or something like that. And so his argument that he gave to the task force is that, okay, the state of California doesn't have that in their budget. And so that he then, proposed as part of the team to the task force, instead of a national model, which, in his opinion, it said is infeasible or impossible for any state to do. Okay, let's adopt a state-specific harms model. So, he in the meeting talked about a potential idea of creating a reparations tribunal, where, a descendant of chattel slavery, if they have been a victim of redlining or police brutality or environmental harms and mass incarceration, they will go to that reparations tribunal, check off the box of each harm that they incurred as a descendant, and then they would be eligible for compensation based on each of those particular harms. But we're still working on that. And I'll just say, in terms of my last thoughts on this, to Senator Bradford's point, right? California has the 5th largest economy in the world, right? California has $40 billion in budget surplus this year. And California has billions of dollars in a rainy day fund. So I am in perfect alignment with Senator Bradford in stating that, cash payments and compensation needs to be seriously considered. And then we're legally mandated to do so, because lastly, in AB-3121, the statute, it talks about how the task force is mandated for any of our proposals to comport with international law standards. And under international law, reparations comes in 5 forms, right? There's compensation, which is a check, restitution, rehabilitation, satisfaction, and guarantees of non-repetition. So compensation being one of the forms of reparations under international law, we have to seriously consider it and propose it, because that's literally what's mandated in the statute.
Okay, so here's my thing with the economist. When it comes to an economic model, the assumption is that any government has an unlimited source of cash or an unlimited budget, and the reason being is because they can adjust different taxes. So my question would be, in any situation, right, we should be able to say that there can be an increase in tax or a decrease in tax or a new tax added that can obtain the funds that's necessary to be able to do a direct cash payment. So I would ask the gentleman, that's the economist, about that, because that's when you teach micro or macroeconomics, that's how you talk about the government. That's one of the reasons why things like bonds are guaranteed income, especially with a government like the United States, because you're looking at it as if it's a risk-free asset. As far as the taxation goes, we'll always be able to collect tax from the citizens, and we have trust in our money and a U.S. military that's able to secure, the amount of money that we have. And also, the thing is, as far as the cash model, if we say that it's $300,000, right, that's assuming that we take a lump sum payment. Anytime there's a situation of something like this where there's damages or anything over time, the person who the money is being paid to, which would be us, we should have the option to either take a lump sum, which would be the present value right now, or take a future sum like an annuities payment model. And I'm curious as to if that was discussed, because if there was an annuities payment model that would stretch those payments over time, all of the money wouldn't have to be dumped in all at one point, and that would eliminate any kind of budget constraints. So when it comes to that particular rebuttal, well, we don't have the money, in my opinion, we don't have the money should never be an option, because the way that you can quantitatively ease and mathematically manipulate payments, interest rates, net present value, rate of return, that should always be an option.
Oh, those are excellent points, and I agree with you. I think the at the last hearing, the economists, they kind of had a truncated presentation, and we just had to move some things along. But again, that was the first conversation with them. We're going to have ongoing conversations with them. Nothing is necessarily set in stone. We have yet to fully go into the development stage of this entire process. We're still literally on the teetering end of the study phase as we're getting ready to release our report in June of this year, which documents all those harms that I mentioned earlier. So stay tuned and contact Dr. Darity.
Yeah, I think that would actually be really. Dr. Darity is the economist, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. That would be a really good. That would be a really good conversation because we could really ask some direct, quantitative questions. Because I think that the issue is talking about this in terms of quantitative and as far as monetary, because I'm sure Dr. Doherty knows the inflation rate currently is 8%. Out in California, you guys are really feeling it with the gas price. I think you guys have an average of like $67 per gas. So the thing is also, we would have to make sure that the amount is regressed to compensate for net present value of the amount of money back then, adjusted for inflation right now, which would probably be even more than that $300,000 figure that he's coming up with.
Yes, for sure.
Now, is there anybody on the task force who is opposed to cash payments, or is everyone pretty much online with that? And I hate to harp on that so much, but concerning cash payments, but I'm not sure about how familiar with my channel and with my content that you are. But one of the things that I religiously stated on this channel is that any conversation around reparations that doesn't include cash payment is an illegitimate conversation. I've said that religiously, and I stand on that. So what's great to hear is that you're 100% in favor of that. You're on board with that. Obviously, Senator Bradford is. But are there others within the task force that are not in favor of cash payments?
Well, I'm not sure of anyone who's not in favor of cash payments. Again, I don't think we've had a real substantive conversation about it yet. But I know, for instance, member Javon Scott Lewis, he's another task force member who has spoken in favor of cash payments. And he did so pretty early on in the process as well. He's wrote a book about reparations in the context of Jamaica, Scammers Yard. And that's around concepts of cash and reparations. So he's an ardent supporter of that as well.
Okay, so what it sounds like is that we're just as far as people online, that have these conversations, that's where I pull all this stuff from, that there's a lot of debates and going back and forth and all this kind of stuff. It seems that what people need to understand is that we're very early on in this process, and there's a lot more meetings that need to be had, things that need to be hashed out, before we can jump to too many quick conclusions of whether or not there will or won't be cash payments, or whether this loophole exists or it doesn't exist. There still appears to be a long way to go, and we're kind of at the tip of the iceberg with it. Is that correct?
Yeah, correct. And I think it's great that people are so engaged and they're asking the right questions. Like, wait, what's going on? Where's the cash? What's this? This is great. It shows that people are passionate and they care about this. And so I will never discourage any of the critical questions. Keep them coming. But yes, there's still much to be done.
Okay, Rob, do you that pretty much kind of settles it for me in terms of the main stuff that I saw people just going back and forth about. Rob, do you have anything else that you wanted to ask or that you wanted to add?
Yeah, actually, I do have a question. Why? So they haven't decided whether the national payment method, which would be cash payments, versus the direct harm method, right? I'm curious to know what was the initial idea that everybody had as a end goal in sight when the commission was first put together.
Oh, that's a great question. Well, I can't speak for everybody. I can only speak for myself. And I think at the first hearing, I think each task force member kind of talked about their expectations, but it's been a while. But just for me, I came into this process as a reparatory justice scholar, as someone with knowledge around international law and human rights law. And again, in the statute, it talks about how any of the proposals that the task force comes up with has to comport with those international law standards. And so that's why I lobbied to be a part of or applied to be a part of the task force. And that I think that's the expertise or contribution that I'll give to the task force. And in terms of expectations, for me, I expect us to provide proposals for reparations that aligns with those 5 forms of reparations. So compensation and cash payments for sure, but there's also restitution. So that talks about, stolen land, stolen intellectual property, getting those rights back. That's what restitution could potentially entail, thinking about the Bruce Beach example in Manhattan Beach. There's also rehabilitation. So that talks about free social services, free legal services, free substance abuse services, free mental health care. That's tailored to the descendants of chattel slavery, given the particular and unique harms that we faced in this country over a course of 400 years. And then there's satisfaction, and that talks about the more symbolic stuff, like an apology and, statues and commemorations, or even removing particularly maybe racist or Confederate relics that might exist in the States still. And then guarantees of non-repetition, which is the last of the 5 forms of reparations under international law. And that talks about, okay, what are the ways in which the state can provide assurances to stop harming the victim group? So that gets into conversations around like significant police reform, even on the more radical side, like abolition, and other areas like that. So that's my vision, is how can we, any of our proposals, for sure prioritize cash, because people are in need in this state, particularly Black Americans who descend from chattel slavery. But there's other forms of reparations I think that are needed as well.
So if there's 5 particular forms of reparations, right? This is just how I feel. If there's 5 particular forms that the International Court says are available, in my opinion, it would be my assumption that the weighted average would be the heaviest on the cash. So if there's 5, then 80%, then 90% of the advocacy should be for cash reparations, and then the other 10% should be split among the other 4, because in my opinion, when it comes to this kind of thing, the cash payments are necessary for us to be able to have the resources that we need to be able to eliminate some of those other things, like you talked about the social programs and different things like that, and police advocacy. If people had the economic base that they had, a lot of those things would be completely eliminated, because we'd have the resources to not even deal with any of that kind of stuff. Like police, we'd have a lawyer, we'd have money for that kind of thing. So my question is, does the task force have a mission and a vision statement that directly pins down what its end goal is for this, and how it's going to improve the constituents that is for?
That's a great question. And again, we're moving ahead. We're just in the teetering end of the study phase. We're moving into the development phase, where we're going to have more substantive conversations about our mission and vision, particularly as we've defined the community of eligibility. I think now that we have a particular group of people in mind, we can be more intentional around our conversations about, okay, what does repair look like? And just really quickly, to your point, God rest his soul, George Floyd, right? He was murdered unjustly, but think about the circumstances around it, right? He was the police was called on him because of a counterfeit $20 bill. If we had reparations, would he have needed a counterfeit bill? Would he even had to patronize that store? He could have had his own store. You know what I'm saying? He could have had his own house and had, everything he needed, where he didn't have to even be in that area, right? So that's something that I think about all the time. That cash is very important.
Yeah, I agree. Great answer. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Also, could you spoke on this already, but could you give just a little bit more detail, if possible, on what a state-specific harms model actually looks like?
Mm-hmm.
What does that actually mean? You articulated it earlier, but if you can just say it, explain that one more time for me, because I had like a question that I wanted to ask when you said that originally, when you explained it originally, but it slipped my mind.
Yeah, no problem. So essentially, and I think this is what the economic consultant team proposed, is that the California task force could potentially propose as a type of reparation, the state to create or establish a reparations tribunal, particularly for the descendants of American chattel slavery and the people who fit into that particular criteria that we met. And so what that will then look like is that, and I think at our last hearing, we listed at least 13 harms. So some of those harms consisted of, again, harms or things that the state of California was directly responsible for. So in some instances, that was slavery, right, with Jonathan Burgess and Don Bastiano's family who came to provide personal testimony. But then there's also, the Jim Crow laws that manifested in the state of California, like redlining and, de facto segregation and other areas like environmental harms. I think we added the war on drugs, homelessness, like I think family welfare, like at the time in the 60s and 70s, where if there was a Black man or a Black father in the house, you would be denied your welfare benefits. So stuff like that, like things that California was directly responsible for. There would be, I think the economists proposed, the task force may suggest a reparations tribunal, where the descendants of chattel slavery can make a claim at that reparations tribunal, check off any and every single box that applies to them. I was harmed by the war on drugs. I was harmed by mass incarceration. I was harmed by police brutality. I was harmed by redlining. I was harmed by this, and that. And your claim would be processed, and then you would be eligible for compensation for each of those claims.
So you would be eligible for compensation. Oh, okay. So that's interesting. So you'd go to the reparations tribunal. You would mark down your grievances, with the things that have happened to you. And then from that point on, the reparations tribunal will provide you with the proper financial compensation to deal with those things that you marked off. Am I getting that correct?
Yes, correct. And the idea is that the economic consultant team would have done the work before the reparations tribunal is established to calculate the compensation for those harms, and the task force itself would, approve that. Okay, so this much for this or this much for that. There's still much to be said. We just literally had a short conversation about it at our last March meeting, but that's what I gathered from the conversation from the economic consultant team.
I got a question. As far as the harms model goes, I don't know how it's being looked at or how it's being calculated, but if there is a suggestion that I'd like to make, I think that an effective way to be able to show a gap in the harm is to not only use all of the data that we have as far as how racism, Jim Crow, and Black codes and slavery harmed Black people in the United States, but we also need to show how white people benefited from it while we were being damaged by all of those things, while we are being damaged by all of those things. So there should be two sets of calculations. It should show how we were economically restricted and how it also economically put white people at about a 93 million mile light year advantage economically from us, because while it may be difficult for us to get records and different things like that for our harms, we can definitely show economic records with receipts of all of the businesses and different things like that that white people made based off of slavery, and specifically in California with all of the gold that they stole, as well as, things like Manhattan Beach and different things like that. So I think there should be two concurrent task force, one that calculates the Black damage and two that calculates white advantage, because white advantage should be really easy, because since white people have already been integrated into the system, we should easily be able to get tax documents, records, income statements, I-9s, and different things like that from their businesses.
Oh, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. Thank you for that. And I'm going to put the email to the task force in the chat so people can email their ideas, and the task force members can hear them and take them into consideration. I was also on record at the last hearing saying I think that all descendants of chattel slavery who are part of that criteria should be owed cash, regardless if they can check a box in terms of the harms, just on the basis that we are descendants of slaves and we have an epigenetic, and this has been studied. We brought in experts to provide testimony on this issue. We have epigenetic trauma just by virtue of us being a descendant of chattel slavery. The harms from our ancestors has been transferred to us, to our genetics. And I think that should be taken in account as well in terms of compensation.
Okay, I want to read this super chat. You can answer it. And then let me just pull it up. This person says, what about the taxing of retirement Social Security benefits, which was taxed in gross? I'm in SoCal. Is that something that you can answer, Kamilah? I don't. I'm not really sure what they mean.
I'm not entirely sure myself. I would just say again, you can ask that question to our task force email and just give a bit more context to it, and then we can get back to you.
Okay. And like we were saying, or like you've been saying, you're very early on in this process, far from the finish line, actually pretty much so at the beginning of the race. So there's still a lot more meetings that have to be held and hashing out that has to be done. So, we don't want to kill you too much with a lot of, hypotheticals and all that kind of stuff, because it seems like there's still a lot more that has to be figured out, So with that being said, Rob, do you have any further questions?
No, I think she did a great job answering the questions, especially being in the initial phases of this and not having everything solidified in stone. It's probably extremely difficult to answer these kind of questions. And, there's a lot of pressure, and I appreciate you answering the questions. That it actually shines a lot of insight as to the goals that people are trying to get accomplished with this whole thing. So thanks for taking the time and being able to articulate a lot of this stuff with us. We appreciate it.
Thank you. I hope that I was able to answer all the questions to the best of my ability. Again, I'm not speaking on behalf of the task force. I'm speaking on behalf of myself as an individual, but also relaying information that's already been discussed in past hearings. So thank you so much for the opportunity. And yeah, thank you.
We're really glad to have you on, and hopefully we can have you on again in the future. Once more meetings have been had, because I'm sure, this is not the end of the online debates and stuff that people will be saying, on Twitter and things of that nature. So there's going to be a lot more questions and things of that coming up in the future. So I would love to have you back on, at a later date in the future. But as of right now, I appreciate you for coming on to today's show.
Yes, and the last thing I'll just say is that our next hearing is on April 13th and April 14th. It'll be our first in-person hearing actually in San Francisco at Third Baptist Church, which is Vice Chair Brown or Pastor Amos Brown's church. So it's going to be really good. And stay tuned. Go to our website, oag.ca.gov/AB-3121. The agenda is already posted there. And stay tuned for an updated agenda that'll also include the phone link so that you can give public comment and put your questions and comments on record. So yeah, stay tuned for that. Thank you.
Definitely. You have a great day, Kamilah. Thank you for coming on to today's show.
Thanks.
That was a good interview, man. Rob, what you think about that?
Yeah, I think it was good. I think we need to make a time frame for that economist.
yeah, for Darity,
Yeah, for Dr. Darity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm gonna see if we can get him on here, because I've heard him discussing that before, and make that claim before, that states can't pay, and hopefully I'm not putting words in his mouth, but based off of the interview that we just had, that states can't pay out in cash reparations. That's something that has to be done nationally. But obviously, I shouldn't say obviously. It seems obvious to me, but they can do it. And also, Rob, I want you, for the people that are listening right now, just give them your credentials, because a lot of people don't know. Like, when I'm just some guy in South Central, You
see how you're gonna put me on the spot like that?
Yeah. I'm just some guy in South Central, but Rob is educated. Okay, like he went to college, got his degree, and all that kind of stuff. That's why he was asking such really good questions and giving such really good information. But give them your credentials, bro. Please let them know, you're not just some dude out here in these states.
Yeah, I got I don't like to brag and all that, what I'm saying? Because again, some of the most brilliant people in the world never step foot in the school, especially we as Black people. We know that, you know what I mean? I mean, just to survive in America the way that we have survived, we're all geniuses in our own right. And that's why, if you listen to a lot of my content on my channel, I sound so harsh with a lot of my critiques that I do, is because I expect greatness and I expect perfection. And I know every single one of us is a genetic example of that. And sometimes, we don't accentuate our full potential. And I think we need to start seeing ourselves in that way. And I think once we start seeing ourselves in that way, it'll be a lot easier for us to do that. But yeah, I got a master's degree in business, and I got a couple other degrees, but my concentration in business is finance and economy. So a lot of times, you know, when I listen to some of these things, I kind of have a different take on it with other people. Like when I hear people say the state doesn't have like anytime anybody says a government agency doesn't have any money, that's not true at all. Just the taxation when it comes to economy is the same as printing off money when it comes to finance. You can always generate money in a government where the government has a good bond rating. Our bond rating got downgraded. I think we were a AAA, but now we are a AA. For the most part, it's almost risk-free to invest with the United States because all the United States has to do is just hike up the taxes. And they also have macroeconomic things that they can do on an international stage. Like we had this big trade beef with China. They can increase tariffs and different things like that on products that come from international. You know what I'm saying? So anytime anybody says that the money's not there, that's not true. We can turn up taxes all day. We got $8 per gallon gas prices. Inflation is 8%. They can adjust monetary policy. They can make the prime rate of interest increase. They can make it go down. They can do all kinds of things. So they got all these things at their disposal. Monetary policy. They have taxation, and they have international taxation, different things like that, like import tariffs. So the money is always there. And if the money's not there, then they can always get it. And you can also always calculate on a basis of future payments, right? There's this payment calculation form called net present value, and it's also called internal rate of return. You can use an annuity model to pay certain things over a certain period of time, like a mortgage. You don't necessarily have to get cash payments all at once. Now, I know it sounds good. Everybody's like, yeah, I could use $300,000 right now, but that's not how a lot of times things work. Even if you won the lottery, there's a possibility that you may not get your jackpot right now. You can get your jackpot paid out over time. And if you get it paid out over time, then you're going to get more money in interest. Same thing with a perpetuity. You know what I'm saying? That's an annuity that's paid out basically over life. So these things can be calculated. Just because California can sit there and say, oh, we don't have the money in the budget right now today. We're not talking about today. We're talking about over my lifetime during a time where payments can be paid. So if my expected lifetime is, you know, whatever, 85 years, just because, you know, however old I am right now, 40, okay, well, we need to calculate a payment schedule from now to year 80 and possibly even integrate my kids into that so you can pay out the specific amount of cash. So the thing is that there's always ways to manipulate things, monetary policy in different ways like that. So anytime anybody says no, if cash is the objective, no is never an option. The only option is always, how are we going to organize payments? That's it. That's one of the reasons why I kept asking those questions. And I didn't want to continue to ask a lot of questions with it being in the development stage because they don't have anything on paper as far as the specific kind of questions that I would be able to ask. So I saw some people in the comments say like I was kind of holding back on certain questions. That's true. I'm be perfectly transparent with you. When she said that they haven't put all this stuff together as far as a solid plan, at that point to me it's kind of like, well, I need to wait and ask these questions once they do have a solid plan so I can have specific points of contingency that I can actually clarify. So if anybody was confused about that, it wasn't, you know, that I was just kind of, you know, doing anything. It's just at that point when I see that there's not really a solid exact specific plan, there's no point in me asking anything anymore until there is. That's one of the reasons why when she said it would be a good idea to bring the economist on, I'm like, okay, the economist is the person that's talking about the monetary policy and the budgetary amounts. These would be questions that would be better geared for him. So hopefully that kind of clarified anything as far as my line of questioning goes.
Yeah. I mean, because like I guess I could have, like you were saying, I could have like kept harping on and on and on, you know, but that's why at a certain point I nipped it in the bud as well. And I even like articulated that, you know, they're at the tip of the iceberg right now. You know what I mean? Like they're if this is a race, the race literally, like the gun literally just fired. Right. And they barely took a step from like the start line. You know, so like to just kind of keep beating the whole thing into the ground in terms of like, you know, cash payments and whether or not the state can do it or not. And yes, they can. And let me give you all these other ideas and so on and so forth about how they can do it. It's like they really haven't even talked it out yet. They just started that portion of the conversation. You know what I mean?
Just to get an idea of how much money California has at its disposal, you guys should take a look one day at the California FEMA budgets. Take a look at the California FEMA budgets. Some of those California FEMA budgets are larger than the state GDPs of some states.
I gotta look into that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man. But today was a good show, and it looks like we got 10 minutes left. We're gonna actually shut it down in an hour.
That's hilarious.
Because I told y'all on the last live stream that we did when we had Chris on. We're not doing that hour and 30 minutes again. But we still got about 9 minutes left to chop it up. But that was I was really glad that she came on with us. You know what I mean? And it's clarified a lot of things, especially with eligibility, because it what's very interesting, right? When it comes to language, like how critical that is, and how like the smallest thing that's missing from a document changes everything.
Absolutely.
When she was highlighting the fact that I'll pull it up right now, like as I'm getting ready to say it. But when Kamilah was highlighting the fact that that looks so janky. Hold on, let me. Oh my goodness, that looks so bootleg.
That's funny.
Let me not pull it up right now, but I'll just read it off. But as far as what she was saying concerning like just simply having a comma like after free black person, comma, living in the U.S. prior to the end of the 19th century, like not having that comma there, at least how it wasn't, I was interpreting it, and how a lot of other people were interpreting it, like not having a simple comma kind of leaves the whole reparations bill up for grabs. Like, like the Haitians and Jamaicans, we all up in this. I'm technically African American. Technically, I'm African American, and technically,
technically, Elon Musk is African American, but he ain't no descendant of slaves. He's a descendant of the apartheid. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. But like that's important. Like a little comma like that, a missing comma could mess around and destroy the whole bill, and have a whole bunch of Haitians and Jamaicans and whatnot, Belizeans. There's a lot of people from Belize here in LA too. Jumping all in there saying, well, on a technicality, I am African American and I am a descendant of a chattel enslaved person. So let me get that, and that all comes from a missing comma.
That's
not crazy.
It not only comes from just a missing comma, but like on a deeper level, it just comes from a missing amount of integrity. You know what I mean? Like it just, it boggles my mind. It just boggles my mind about the integrity that people have internally. Like I just look at people that try to do that, and I just wonder, like, where in your right mind would you even like this shouldn't even be necessary. Like black people shouldn't even have to try to safeguard things that we're getting to advance ourselves for wrongs that we dealt with from other black people. If anything, other black people should be in support. You know what I mean? And it's just like I just look at that, and it just I just shake my head. I don't get it. It just drives me crazy, because I would never go to any country, Gambia or, Ghana, and I would never try to, impose on anything ethnic that they have going on there. It just, I just can't, I don't understand it. I don't understand where the integrity is. To me, it's just really shameful that this even has to take place. And to me, just the simple fact that all of this has to be done and people just can't not do this kind of behavior. It's just something that we all need to observe. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, because you're definitely gonna have folks that if the language is tight, they're gonna try to sneak in knowing better. You know what I mean? Like, bro, you Jamaican. You know what I mean? Yeah, you was born. You Haitian or whatever. You was born in the States, but you know where your lineage lies. Why you?
If the United States, bro,
finagle your way into something.
Like if the United States ever said, you know what, the United States Immigration Customs Services was wrong for what they did and how they deported Haitian immigrants. We're going to pay out Haitians, we're going to give them $500 a month for the next 2 years as a result of the way that they were treated. I'd never say, you know what, I used to listen to the Fugees back in the day, and I watch Abba and Preach, so I'm like 0.10% Haitian. Let me go ahead and I actually think I got a little bit of jerk chicken in my stomach right now. Like, what? Come on, man. Like, why? Who does that?
Exactly. That's crazy. That's insane. But people do. They do. And that's why having a lineage base was so important too. Like, there's a lot of discussion. I've seen a lot of people argue against lineage-based and say like why it should have been race-based, and they genuinely believe, these are other descendants of American slavery that genuinely believe like it should have been race-based, right? But like when you talk about it being race-based, the guy wrote a book about it, man. It was like some Indian guy who was saying he was black, and he got all these grants and scholarships, like I think to get through medical school, and he got through all of medical school being black, and then after the fact wrote a book about it, like, haha, surprise, I'm Indian, I'm not black. You get what I'm saying? Like, these people are out there, like they will take advantage like that.
You bring up a good point, and I want everybody, it's 206 people in the room. Think about this. Just think about this. Just let this marinate on your brain. We're the group of people that gets told we need to pull ourselves up by the bootstraps, when literally every ounce of everything that we've ever done in this country has pulled up every other group, including white people, by their bootstraps. We ourselves, we literally pulled this country up by its bootstraps. And all of these people, the white people and the non-white people and the black people have the nerve to turn around and tell us to pull ourselves up by the bootstraps. Our entire history is pulling this country up by the bootstraps. Everybody needs to remind people of that anytime they form their mouth to try to say any of that kind of sacrilegious nonsense to any one of you.
Here, let me show you guys this in closing. Let me see let me pull this up in a manner that it doesn't look so bootleg like how it looked before. So I just want to show you this guy. I'll show you what to type in. And like this happens a lot. You got the Rachel Dolezals of the world, and then you got this Indian guy that I'm about to show you. I mean, you got the Kamala Harrises, you know what I mean? Jamaican/Indian, but like if you let, CNN and MSNBC tell it, no, she just descendant of American slavery. She's just African-American woman. If you let them tell it, so anybody can just come around when you're talking about something, a race-based model, anybody could just pop up and just be like, hey, I'm black. Let me run them reparations. And it's like, hold on, wait a minute, bro, or sis.
Yeah, no,
you're
and I'll
Indian.
tell you what,
like you're an Indian. Like
you guys see how light skinned I am. That's another thing I'm really tired of. So that's one thing that you're gonna start seeing now. White people are doing that. They'll say they have like 1/8 of black in them, so they're black. You see that they're doing that now. So all of us, as far as chattel American descendants of slavery, of chattel slavery, we all have a little bit of white in us involuntarily. So why not just start saying we're white? See how far that gets us, since they can just say that they're black. Does that make any sense? You're gonna start seeing these $5 reparation people. That's why this kind of stuff is so important to nail down right now, and not only to get everybody out of it and make sure that it's specifically for us, and we nail down the definition of the descendants of slavery, but make sure that we keep people out of it and keep those definitions tight. My bad, Tony. I didn't mean to cut you off, bro.
No, you didn't cut me. I was trying to cut you off, but I was trying to cut you off. But if you go to Google and just type in Indian man pretending to be black, and as you can see on your screen, he pops up every. So this is in 2015 when this broke.
That's what I'm saying.
Why I fake being black for med school. Oh, there's his name, Mindy Kaling's brother. I fake being black. See on CNN. So he's he didn't care. Like he just put himself out there. Like, he didn't get caught.
Oh, Myron Gaines.
Yeah, he didn't. You got a Myron Gaines here. He didn't get caught doing all this, from my understanding. He just came out and was like, "Hey, guess what I did? I'm Indian. Surprise! I'm not black."
That's fraud. That is fraud, especially if he got that stuff from a government plan. You lied to federal agencies to get money. He shouldn't be practicing anything other than on a chain gang.
Exactly. Look, there goes his book. He wrote a book about it. Almost Black. Man's just running around here bragging about that,
And this is the same kind of pull yourself up by the bootstrap. Like, are you serious?
Yeah. Be the same ones tell you to pull yourself up by your bootstraps that are stealing from you at the same time. So it's like you talked about, like, where's the integrity of these people? But as we all know, a lot of people don't have integrity like that, man. They just don't have it.
My thing is too, another thing that we need to start, people, when I be on my channel, you guys hear me say this, I say run them families. These people need to start running them families, man. You know what I'm saying? Like, if this was me and I worked at that, bro, you suspect, man. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're gonna have to prove that you're black to me, because you know what I'm saying? Like I always tell everybody, my whole family is racially ambiguous for the most part, but there's certain things that you can see and tell, and especially with talking to people, if you're black, period. Everybody knows what it is. We know what time it is, and we know what's up. I think just with a conversation from like 5 seconds, we'd have been able to see, nah, this dude, he's fake. You know what I'm saying? But he's putting in an application at an admissions office at a college. You know what I'm saying? Some Karen in the Midwest isn't going to know the difference. She's not going to know the questions to ask to see if this dude is black or not. And then he comes out and writes a book. He writes a book about crime, because what he did was crime. He told lies about his lineage and where he came from in order to get money, and he's parading it around in a damn book. Where else can you do that? As far as hip hop goes, you can't sing songs about killing people and murdering them and not get in trouble. You can't do a DJ Vlad interview and talk about how you jumped somebody back in the 90s and turn around and not do jail time for it. Why does dude get to write a book about lying about our lineage and taking from one of us that could have used it?
Exactly. And then it's put on a platform because of it. CNN and MSNBC and the New York Times. Everybody's saying, liberal. Hey, yeah, these are people that are supposed to be liberal, you know, so that means they're supposed to be on our side. Supposedly, we all know that they're not, but you know, the
reason they promoted him is because he perfected their model of hijacking anything that we do and using it to benefit himself while one of us gets cut out. That's the reason why they promoted him, because they said, look, this dude replicated exactly what we've been teaching you guys since the 1950s.
Exactly. And
appreciate you, Bright Eyes.
Yeah, is Bright Eyes already subscribed to your channel? Have you ever seen Bright Eyes in the comment section?
I think so. I think Bright Eyes has been. I don't have a good technical setup like you do. I had to use one screen for everything. So sometimes I may miss a comment or two, but I try to catch them. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, you know, if for those of you who are impressed with Rob today, because you know Rob was spitting. You know, I told y'all from the very beginning, the first time I had Rob on here, I told you guys, Rob is smarter than me. He is way more smarter, way more intelligent. I'm just some dude in South Central LA with a camera and some lights on. Rob is an educated brother.
Kind words, man.
He's an educated brother, you know. So
kind words, man.
So if you were impressed, you know, with you know, all the stuff that he was speaking on earlier, you know, when we had Kamilah on, you guys need to go subscribe to his YouTube channel, right? And it's not, and you want them to go to Blacklight Revelations I now.
Yeah, I had to take all the content off of Blacklight Revelations II because they gave me 2 channel strikes in a row, and I didn't want to lose my channel. So it's not. I mean, you can subscribe. I will be posting content over there again on Blacklight Revelations II, but on Blacklight Revelations I. You know what I'm saying? That's where I'm mostly active. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, facts. Only separation. Cleveland stand up 216-330 and I hitty.
Yeah, man. So let me put that in the comment section, in the live chat. So like Revelations, just, you know, in case, you know, because Rob was, you know, he was doing his thing today. All I had to do was kind of just sit back and, you know, I asked my little questions, and then I sat back like, anything you want to add, Rob? Yeah, well, actually, I do. I was going.
Well, the thing is that for everyone who the people who truly deserve reparations, they truly deserve it. So anybody that can do anything to try to help with that, I know that's one of the reasons why you do what you do, Tony. Same here with me. You know what I'm saying? Like, people need to be 100. Me personally, I want to see everybody get their reparations. I want to see the wealth gap closed. I want to see us dominate the world, and I know we can. So anything that'll help with that, I'm all about it.
All right, so I just dropped the link to Rob's YouTube channel, Blacklight Revelations I. You know, so and it's also in the description as well. It's all, his YouTube channels are always in the description, so you can subscribe to Blacklight Revelations II. I'm sure he's going to start uploading there again soon. You know,
after April 30th.
Okay,
that's when my first strike falls off.
So after April 30th, Rob will be posting on Blacklight Revelations 2, but he's posting about like 2 times a day on Blacklight Revelations 1. So y'all behind. Yeah. Y'all behind, because Rob be going in with the live streams on his channel.
Yeah. Yeah, we talk about a variety of different topics. We talk about a lot of the Ukraine stuff that we had. We that's going on now. We talked about that stuff almost a month ago. You know, the gas prices and all of that. You know.
Mm-hmm. And shout out to Sincere Love the guy. He said, does Rob have an email, and how do we get on it? Since
I don't.
You want to say that out loud? I know Sincere. Like I can send him your email. Like
I
can send it to him personally, so you don't have to say it like out loud.
Well,
like,
I mean, you can, or the email if you ever wanted to contact me for content or whatever. All you gotta do is just go to my channel, follow my channel. I think there's an email link on the channel in the about page. You can hit that link or just hit me up on one of my social media. I'm not gonna lie. Sometimes I'm really bad with responding to social media because I get a lot of messages and different things like that from like work and other projects and stuff that I'm working on. But I try to always get back as often as I can. And I frequently go live. So even if you're not able to watch a live, you can just hop into one of my live streams and be like, yo, I emailed you, fool. How come you ain't email me back? And I'll be like, oh, okay, my bad. I'll check it when I get off and look for it. So, you know what I'm saying? Never be afraid to just reach out to me like that. You know what I'm saying?
For sure. And before we leave, Black Male First said my question didn't get answered. So before we dip out of here, Black Male First, go ahead and state your question again, whatever your question was. I don't know, maybe he had a question for Kamilah, but obviously she's not here now. You know, I wouldn't think that he has a question for us, you know, because he's been here for quite some time. I don't know what he would be asking us, but they're on the side of their own interest. I'm about to shut it down because I don't see anything. Yeah.
Oh, there he goes. He said it was a super chat.
It was a super chat.
Yeah, he said his question was a super chat.
Like my first Black man. Oh, okay. Here it goes. I found it. I heard there was a reparations movement in Jamaica. Why can't these immigrants petition their own country of origin? I would support it. You know. Yeah, I mean, well, aren't they doing that in Jamaica right now? If I'm not mistaken, aren't they trying to get reparations and all that type of stuff? I could have swore that that's what they're doing, aren't they?
Yeah, I thought that in Jamaica they were trying to get reparations from the royal family, if I'm not mistaken, but I could be mistaken. He might be talking about something else. But last time I checked, there was something going on with the UK and Jamaica. I don't know if it had anything to do with here. Who knows? I don't know. CARICOM, everybody's putting in the comments, so maybe that's
they're putting in they have CARICOM. Yeah, I mean, Black Male First, if you want to support them, yeah, that's already going on. That's called CARICOM. You know, I've heard about that, but I've never like looked into it, you know. But yeah, if you want to support them, Black Male First, go on ahead. So with that being said, you know, that does it for today's video, today's live stream. I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Please make sure you hit the thumbs up button on the way out.
Please hit the thumbs up.
That's very, very important. And lastly, you know, thank you, Kamilah Moore, for coming on to today's show.
Absolutely.
Very informative show. She did a good job answering the questions that we had for it, especially the ones that Rob had. Especially given the fact that like she only has so much information to work with right now. You know what I'm saying? Like she only knows so much right now because they're just now getting a lot of these conversations started. But she did a good job answering the stuff that she could answer up to.
And don't worry about it. I remember every single one of those questions. So when they get everything drafted, I'll have those and more. So don't worry about it. We in there.
For sure. Look, they're trying to bribe me to stay on.
Look, Tarek.
just to keep you on a little longer since I missed most of this.
You see Fantizzy down there in the comments. He said you didn't address his statement.
Oh boy. See, I'm about to dip now. You didn't answer my question. Man.
You better turn it off. The tomatoes are coming.
Right, the tomatoes are coming out. You didn't answer my question. You didn't answer mine either. Yeah. Fantizzy all over here. You trying to get Fantizzy trying to get the tomatoes thrown at me and stuff. Like this wasn't any good. You didn't answer my tomatoes. You didn't answer my question.
That's hilarious, man. That is hilarious.
Yeah, man. But we're gonna go ahead and head out of here, and we'll definitely catch you guys next week. And who knows? We might mess around and have Sandy Darity or William Darity Jr. on here. I'm going to try to reach out to him so that we can get some of these questions answered as well, especially the technical ones that Rob had. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So, you know, you never know, man. Make sure you tune in next week. We might have William Darity Jr. on. So we'll see.
I'm gonna buy a notebook between now and then for questions.
Yeah, just start jotting them all down. I'm gonna go in. All right, y'all. We'll catch y'all later. Peace.
All right, y'all. Peace.